The Dharma topic. Total quality management. Total quality control, or total quality management, was first introduced by the Americans to the Japanese after the Japanese lost the Second World War. They were in trouble. In order to import food, they had to produce something that could get them the money needed to pay for food. Japan at that time had only cheap labor, meanwhile the quality of Japanese products had a very poor image. Many quality control experts were sent to Japan to help improve the quality of Japanese products, which were very poor then. These QC gurus helped the Japanese tremendously. The Japanese became keen learners and put into practice what they learned from their American teachers. Later, they started to develop their own version of total quality management, total quality control. The Union of Japanese Scientists and Engineers, JUSE, was established in May 1946 and was consolidated in 1962 under the jurisdiction of the Science and Technology Agency, now the Ministry of Education, Culture, Sports, Science and Technology, of the Japanese government to cope with the rapid advancement of society. Today, JUSE is widely known in and outside the country as a center of quality control in Japan. Quality. It is worthwhile to begin this paper with a story related by Professor Kaoru Ishikawa, a Japanese professor of quality management, to provide a clue for the definition of quality in the field of business management. Professor Kaoru was once invited to an Eastern European country to conduct a course on total quality management. He was taken to a watch factory. While there, he wanted to see how they practice quality management in the country, so he asked the factory manager whether they produced good quality products. The manager very proudly said, "Yes, we have good quality products." Then the professor said, "Well, if that is the case, your watches must sell very well, since they are of good quality." "Unfortunately, this is not the case," said the factory manager. "Especially now, we have a lot of competition from your country." The professor was curious and asked, "Could you tell me your definition of quality?" The manager replied, "Well, this is very simple. Quality means conformance to specification. Whether we are talking about a product or service that we are providing, it must conform to specification, a set of specifications actually." The professor nodded and asked, "Well, what are your specifications?" "Of course, for a watch the most important specification is accuracy," replied the factory manager. "If a watch is slower or faster than 5 minutes for a day, then it fails to conform to our specification." When one hears this, one could not help but smile. If a watch is slow by 5 minutes a day, now most of the watches are electronic watches and a battery will last for 2 to 3 years, then that watch is useless. So there is a problem with this traditional definition of quality. From that definition, the watches produced by that factory are of high quality, but the problem is that they have the wrong specification. Instead of defining the specification from the manufacturer's point of view, the modern definition of quality places the emphasis on the user or the customer. It is now defined as fitness for use. First, we must understand the requirements of the customer or user. A product or service is only of good quality if it can satisfy the user or customer. After understanding the requirements and needs of the user, the specifications can then be set, and from there you can design the product. This is referred to as research and development of a product that will conform to a set of specifications that will satisfy the customer's needs. Then you manufacture according to the specifications. From the product or service to the customer, you have the activities of sales and marketing. When defined in this way, it is a closed loop. It also embraces all the different activities of an organization, especially in the commercial world. Whether it is producing a product or providing a service, the emphasis is on the customer. We have defined quality. In total quality management, quality places the focus on customers or users. Totality. Now let's talk briefly about totality. What do we mean by total in TQM? Actually, total quality control or total quality management was first introduced by the American to the Japanese. After the Japanese lost the Second World War, they were in trouble. In order to import food, they had to produce something that could get them the money needed to pay for food. Japan at that time had only cheap labor, however Japanese products had very poor image at that time. When Dr. Armand Valin Feigenbaum went to Japan, he taught the Japanese his version of total quality control. In 1955 he wrote a book entitled Total Quality Control, and in that book, Dr. Feigenbaum advocated that the responsibility to produce good quality products and services must not be confined to the quality department. Every department in that organization or company must participate, from research and development to manufacturing, to sales and marketing as well as administration. Of course, every big company has a quality department, but quality products and services are not the sole responsibility of the quality department. That is his concept of totality, and he called it total quality control. In the Japanese model they also have that totality as advocated by Feigenbaum, however they also added another dimension defining total as total participation by all levels of the organization, from the chairman of the board to the managing director or the CEO down to the first-level workers, technicians and even clerical staff. Here totality means participation from every department as well as participation from all levels of that organization in the TQM activities. Then there is a third meaning of total perspective. So when we talk about total quality management, TQM, it is no longer just confined to the quality of the product or service, but is expressed to mean the total way of running a business that embraces all activities, quality, productivity, sale, cost, delivery, etc. Of course, at the core, the achievement of product and service quality is most emphasized, but besides that, total quality control also pays attention to controlling cost, expanding sales, improving production and productivity, and also delivering on time. In the modern world of high competition, you have to continue to find a way to shorten delivery time. If we need to present it in a picture, the core is quality, defined from the customer's perspective. But you cannot produce a very, very expensive product. That is not competitive, so cost, delivery, sales and productivity have to be taken care of. I remember my professor was once invited to a division of a big US multinational company as a quality management consultant. He asked the management team to give him a report on what they were doing to promote quality. There was a lengthy presentation from the general manager himself and his staff. Then they had coffee break. As you know, Americans like to eat donuts during coffee break. The professor picked up a donut and said, "Today I see a donut phenomenon in your company, because in your report I can't even smell the customers. Everything you describe to me is from your own viewpoint. It is not from the viewpoint of the customers." One of the keen managers said to the professor, "Oh, yes, Professor, I like your analogy. We Americans like to drink coffee, so it is drinking coffee without milk and sugar." When he said that, he thought that the professor would praise him. The professor said, "No, it is like drinking coffee without coffee." So do you get the meaning? The professor was talking about total quality management with no consideration for the customers. That is why he used the donut analogy. He said this is a donut phenomenon because the core is empty, like a donut. Management. In TQM, we divide management into two major categories: routine or daily management and breakthrough management. The foundation of good management is called routine management or daily management. Many of you have heard about ISO 9000, and many of you might be working in big organizations and have been involved in ISO certification. ISO 9000 is a very important and good system to enhance daily management or routine management of an organization. The key idea of ISO 9000 is standardization, so that continuity is maintained when you perform certain activities and when this is passed on from one person to another. The problem with many small businesses, or what we sometimes call family businesses, is that, normally all the experiences are in the head of the founder, and when he goes away, all the experiences go away with him and the next person has to start from zero. With a good daily management or routine management system, you have standardization and documentation of all important things you do. All the important ways of running the business are well documented. Therefore, it does not matter who is assigned to a particular responsibility. Another important aspect of routine management is to seek for continuous improvement in performance measures on quality, productivity, sale, and cost. The magnitude of improvement is typically between 3 to 5% annually. There is another type of management activity which cannot be easily translated into English. In Japanese it is known as Hoshin Kanri, or Chinese Fangzhen Quan Li. Hoshin is policy, direction, etc., Kanri is control or management. This deals with important activities at the top management level, whereby the top management set the direction, vision, and policy of that organization, which is able to motivate and drive the entire organization towards that common vision, goal and direction. Typically this type of management activity looks further into the future, so it is not short-sighted like looking at obtaining good results on a daily or monthly basis. Hoshin Kanri also seeks breakthrough. There is a beautiful story from Matsushita on this. This is the story of the car radio division of Matsushita. Of course, now we are more sophisticated, we talk about an audio system in an automobile. At one time this division of Matsushita was supplying car radio to a car manufacturer. They had the business for over 3 years. Every year, they would renew the contract for the subsequent year. That had been going on smoothly, and every year the team from the customer would request for price reduction. The customer always asked for price reduction on an annual basis. In the first year, Matsushita was able to reduce the price by 8%, followed by 6%, and then 5% in subsequent years. They were going into the negotiation table for the contract of the subsequent year, and they had to do their homework. They decided that it was getting tougher for them to reduce the cost of making the radio, so they were going to offer a 4% reduction in the price for the new contract. They knew that the customer would bargain very hard, so they were prepared to give 5%. That was their idea. The Matsushita group went to the meeting, and after the initial greetings, the representatives of the customer wasted no time and said, "We like you very much. Your quality has been good, no complaints from customers, and your delivery has also been very prompt, so it does not affect our own production, but a competitor of yours who is very keen in this business had approached our very senior management. They offered to supply the car radio for our next year model at a price which is 40% lower than what you are currently selling us. So please consider this offer." The immediate reaction from the Matsushita team was, "What, 40%? Yes, it was 40%. The Matsushita team replied that it was a very, very unusual request. They could not be rude to a customer and tell the customer, "No way." Instead they said, "Since your request is very unusual, please allow us to go back, look into it, and then we will come back with an official quotation." As soon as they left the customer's place, they said, "How can it be? It is an insult to us. We had done our homework, and we were prepared to give a 4% reduction. How could they ask for a 40% reduction which is 10 times what we could give? This is just impossible, unless we want to lose money by subsidizing the customer." This request was so unusual that the story went around Matsushita, and eventually they had a meeting, but they had already decided to give up. They had to politely give a formal quotation. Then the founder of Matsushita, none other than the grand old man Konosuke Matsushita, came into the meeting uninvited. He told his managers, "Well, I heard about all this. Let me tell you this. I think we have a very, very kind customer. There is already a competitor of ours, who is offering to be their supplier at a price 40% cheaper than what we are currently charging them, so the customer could have just written us off. Of course there is no way that we could match that price, but they are so kind and they are giving us another chance. They are giving us a very important piece of information also, that is to say, there is a competitor who can supply the car radio at 40% cheaper than what we are doing. So this is a very important piece of information." The grand old man had also done his homework. He said, "In terms of market share, we are number 3, very far behind the market leaders. If we are able to accept this challenge and offer to continue to supply this radio at 40% cheaper than what we are currently doing, then there is a chance for us to become number 1. Then he said something very philosophical, "Let me also tell you this. It is easier for us to reduce the cost by 50% than by 5%. You heard it right. Most of you must be thinking, how can that be? 5% must surely be easier to achieve than 50% reduction. You must understand what this grand old man was trying to say. When you are trying to reduce the cost by 5%, how do you do this? You essentially do this with routine management. You essentially try to do this the same old way. But if you have to reduce it by 50%, then nothing short of a breakthrough will achieve that, so you have to forget about the way you manufacture that radio. You have to forget about the way you design that radio, and even the way you market that radio. You have to seek a breakthrough. So the definition of a breakthrough is setting a target that you do not know how to achieve when the target is set. This is breakthrough management. Obviously, you must understand that in order to achieve breakthrough management, you need to be very focused. Let me add an interesting episode by my professor in another division of the same multinational company that he visited. A report was made to him, and after that, the professor asked the general manager, "This morning you showed me many plans. Could you please tell me which one out of the 7 or 8 things you mentioned is the most important?" The general manager said, "Professor, being an academician, maybe you don't know my job. I have to take care of so many things. Of course, all of them are important to me." Then the professor said to this manager, "The problem with you is that you have too many girlfriends. With breakthrough management, you are not allowed to have so many girlfriends. You have to focus on one thing, maybe at the most 2. This way, the entire organization is focused on achieving the breakthrough. So this is breakthrough management. Then in breakthrough management, in Hoshin Kanri, you have to be very far-sighted. Konosuke Matsushita, the grand old man, had a long-term plan for Matsushita. When we talk about long-term plan in an organization, we typically have a 5-year plan. In Malaysia, for example, the government has 5-year plans. Now we are into the 12th Malaysian 5-year plan. Matsushita has a plan which stretches over 250 years. You may say this old man must be crazy. He is not going to live 250 years, but he set a 250-year plan for his organization. He wants his company to outlive him. I told our members in Nanxiong that as Buddhists, we could have 250 life plans for ourselves in our spiritual cultivation. His philosophy on running his company is also very interesting. In many companies, the most important objective is to make profit. Matsushita, on the other hand, said, "Our objective is not to make profit, but to serve the society." Actually, in the wisdom of this grand old man displays a lot of Dharma. This is the Dharma of cause and effect. If you focus on the cause, the right one, then of course you will get good results. For me, when I started working in a multinational company, I told myself that if the Dharma is very good, then I should be able to apply it in my job. Initially, my job was technical in nature, but very soon I moved on to a management role. I applied the Dharma, and it worked very well. But of course, in a multi-religious background, we do not emphasize this as a Buddhist teaching. For example, if you are able to apply cause and effect, then you will do very well. I did that, and it helped me a lot in my management job. Then after a while, I looked at the Buddhist organizations and said to myself, Buddhist temples and Buddhist organizations are generally not very well managed, so could I apply some of the things that I have learned on modern management in Buddhist organizations? I started doing that in the Nanxiong temple. I taught quality management in Nanxiong, and it worked very well also. It had been a long time, nearly 15 years in fact, since I talked on this kind of topic in public. Last year, I was invited by Sin-Chu newspaper to give a Dharma talk. Originally, I wanted to talk on a special Buddhist teaching on exchanging of self with others. In Chinese, it is Zi Ta Xiong Huan Fa, and the person in charge said, "No, this type of title will not attract people. Could you please choose another title?" I decided that I was going to talk about exchanging of self with others anyway, but before that I would talk about TQM. They liked that very much. In Buddhist teachings, management is ultimately self-management. It is spiritual cultivation. Empathy. In Nanxiong we have a counseling center with professional people as full-time staff doing counseling. We also have a big group of volunteers who have to undergo very intensive training before they are allowed to do any counseling. In counseling skills, we emphasize a lot on empathy. If you are trying to help someone psychologically, you must put yourself in the shoes of that person. Counseling is done not from the counselor's view but from that of the person who is seeking your help. The Buddhist teaching is even more profound than this, and I am going to move on to a very interesting teaching on exchanging of self with others. This teaching was given by the great Indian teacher, Shantideva, who wrote the book called Bodhisattvakariyavatra, Entering the Path of Bodhisattva. He used this to develop the aspiration for perfect Buddhahood. Dharma on exchanging of self with others. There are several important steps to develop in practicing exchanging of self with others, and I will cover them one by one. First, is to contemplate on the sameness of oneself and others. You can look at all the people around you. In fact, in Buddhist teachings we talk about all beings in the 6 different realms of samsara. All beings without exception seek happiness and do not want suffering. We see this not only in humans, but even in animals. The animals, just like us, also seek happiness and avoid suffering. All beings equally seek happiness and try to avoid suffering. When you consider the sheer number of beings other than yourself, the number is infinitely more than just one person or being. Surely the welfare of sentient beings is greater than the welfare of one. This is the sameness or equality of self with others. In fact, the Buddhist teaching emphasizes a lot on equality. 2 months ago, we went to a conference in Bodh Gaya. In the closing, we had a very interesting guest of honor, the grandson of Mahatma Gandhi, Sri Gopal Krishna Gandhi. Sri G. Gandhi said that the Buddha had liberated 2 groups of people 2,500 years ago. First were the women, when the Buddha allowed the establishment of the Bhikshuni Sangha. At that time, women had no position in Indian society, especially in the religious circle, so that was a breakthrough. Second, the Indian had the caste system where people of the lower castes were treated very poor by those of the higher castes. The Buddha rejected the caste system. The Buddha accepted members of all the different castes into his order of monastic Sangha. And when they entered the Sangha, they no longer carried that caste distinction with them. Sri G. Gandhi said that sadly after the disappearance of Buddhism from India, the 2 groups of people liberated by the Buddha were again oppressed. When India gained independence, the constitution clearly stated that no one should be discriminated based on caste. In reality this is not the case. When you go to India, you can see that it is still very prevalent by reading the classified advertisements of Indian newspapers. Indian parents still arrange marriage for their children. When the children are ready to be married, parents looking for a son-in-law or daughter-in-law will advertise in the papers. Their advertisements are classified according to caste. There is no inter-caste marriage. The Buddha, however, advocated equality. Second, is to contemplate on the faults of self-cherishing. Self-cherishing is the behavior of being self-centered. We have to contemplate on the faults of possessing a self-centered attitude. You will find people who are extremely self-centered behaving as if the whole world revolves around them. If you are very selfish, then you would develop poor interpersonal relationship with others. As being selfish, you are inconsiderate and no one likes a selfish person, therefore you have very few friends. This is very obvious. More seriously, you must understand that being selfish and self-centered is closely connected with attachment to self. In the Buddha's teachings, one has to practice anatta or no self if one wants to get out of samsara. But if you are attached to the self, then this binds you to samsara and you will continue to be in the circle of birth and rebirth in one of the 6 realms according to the ripening of previous karmic seeds you have planted. These are the faults of cherishing oneself. Third, is to contemplate on the benefit of cherishing others. Conversely, instead of just looking after one's interest, we now put the emphasis on others. This is called cherishing others. When we show kindness to others or when we experience the kindness shown to us, we should show our gratitude, thus you will have very good interpersonal relationship. In this modern age of ours, there is a big problem with industrialization and commercialization. Many parents, both husband and wife, have to work for a living, thus the children do not receive enough parental attention. Youths and children nowadays do not understand gratitude. They take a lot of things for granted. Whenever we organize a camp in the Xiong temple, we always try to emphasize this traditional value of showing gratitude to parents and to people who have been kind to us. When we receive the kindness of others, then it is also our responsibility to reciprocate the kindness by being kind to others. In fact, in Bahasa Malaysia, we have a very beautiful way of expressing appreciation, terima kasih. What is terima kasih? It is expressing your gratitude for receiving a kindness shown by a person, so you say terima kasih, very beautiful actually. If you can develop this opposite attitude of cherishing others, instead of cherishing yourself, then you start to practice the sila. You practice the panca sila. Times abstaining from killing, even abstaining from causing any form of harm to others. Times abstaining from taking the not given. Times abstaining from sexual misconduct. Times abstaining from false speech, and times abstaining from taking intoxicants. So when you practice the panca sila, you have the consideration of others in mind, rather than being very selfish. For example, people who are very greedy and have a big appetite for seafood like to go to a seafood restaurant and pick the fish that is still swimming in the tank. They say that such a fish is good to eat because it is fresh. You must understand that you enjoy your food at the expense of the poor fish. In the Buddhist teachings, this is considered most unskillful. There is a saying, cease to do evil, learn to do good. Ceasing to do evil and learning to do good is the foundation. This is the sila aspect. This is followed by purifying the mind. In purification of the mind, there are two aspects, namely samadhi and panna. When we cultivate mentally, we cultivate samatha and vipassana. This is built upon sila or morality. In the Buddhist teachings, morality is the foundation for us to continue to purify the mind or to practice meditation. The greatest benefit of cherishing others is that if you are ultimately able to practice anatta or detaching from self-attachment, then you can get out of samsara and attain nibbana. However, if your aspiration to attain nibbana is not for oneself alone but for all sentient beings, because you understand that all sentient beings from beginningless past until now have been your own mother before, who is as kind as your mother in this life, could you not want to help these mother sentient beings? It is like not caring when your own mother suffers. However, if you have the aspiration to attain perfect Buddhahood or Sammasambuddha and help sentient beings, then that aspiration is bodhicitta. And that is what the Buddha did. Fourth, is to practice exchanging of self with others. What do we mean by that? Let me try to put it simply. Just as I previously have no concern for others, that is being very self-centered. Now I will abandon concern for myself. And just as I previously cherish myself, now I will cherish others. So instead of cherishing your own self, cherish others. Instead of the could not careless attitude about others, now you turn that attitude towards yourself. This teaching is called exchanging of self with others. Now I will share with you a story that happened in Japan. There was a young man who was born in a very rich family. His parents left him billions in properties, but he gambled away the entire inheritance and he had to start worrying about his livelihood. Then he remembered that when he was a small boy, he used to go to a temple with his mother. He remembered as a young boy that the monks there seemed to live a very easy life. He wanted to become a monk, not that he wanted to attain nibbana, but it was his form of Wan sek. As he no longer has money, he had to worry about mundane things like earning a livelihood. The abbot of the temple received him and asked him what he wanted. He told the abbot he wanted to become a monk. "Why do you want to become a monk?" asked the abbot. He was not brave enough to say, "I come here to Wan sek," so he just kept quiet. Then the abbot said, "No, I think you have the wrong idea. You must be thinking that the monks lead a very easy life here, but this is not so. They actually work very hard. If you do not believe me, you ask all the monks here. Do not think that they just lead a very easy life." So he asked the young man, "Do you know how to cultivate the land?" "No," replied the young man. The abbot asked him many, many things, all to which the young man replied, "No." Eventually the abbot said, "Do you know how to cook rice?" This young man had never cooked rice before. Everything, including food, was prepared and placed in front of him. So in desperation the abbot said, "Okay. Please tell me what you can do. What do you know?" The young man thought for a while and said, "Actually, I'm not too bad at playing chess." He did not know anything else. When he was small, he was born into a rich family, so he was never serious in studies, but he played a lot. He was quite good at chess. The abbot was very happy. He said, "Okay, that's very good." The abbot asked his attendant to go to the back quarters and ask an old monk to join them in the reception room. Then, on his way back, the attendant was asked to bring the abbot's sword. The chess set was laid on the table and the abbot put the sword next to the chess set. The old monk arrived and was asked to sit opposite the young man. Then the abbot told the young man and the old monk, "You two are going to play a game of chess and whoever loses, I'm going to chop off his head with this sword here." The young man was then given the option to withdraw from the game of chess, but he decided he would try and take up this gamble. So he put all his concentration on the game, with no wandering thoughts. He was actually quite good at chess and after a while, he was very confident he was going to win. Then with a sigh of relief, and only then did he look at the old monk opposite him. He thought to himself, "How can I allow this to happen? My parents had left me with so much money, and I gambled away all the money, so I'm a useless man in society. And now because of me and my livelihood I asked to be a monk here, and this old monk, who is so kind in his appearance, is going to die because of me." He thought that if there was one person who had to die, then it had to be him, not the old monk. So he performed the act of exchanging himself with the old monk. Then when it was his turn to make a move, he deliberately made a wrong move. The old monk, who was also quite good at chess, was surprised. The young man continued to deliberately make several more wrong moves. Before too long it was very clear that the young man was going to lose the game, but he was all prepared for that. Of course the abbot saw all this and he just overturned the chessboard saying, "Well, no one has won and no one has lost." The abbot then turned to the young man and said, "You learned two things. One is concentration. When you were playing the game of chess, you concentrated completely on that game. So I know that under proper guidance you can meditate well. I shall be able to guide you to practice meditation. More importantly, you have the potential to be a bodhisattva, since you were prepared to even lose your life for another person. Okay, since you have these two qualities I will accept you," said the abbot, and the young man became a monk at that temple. Of course, that story has a beautiful ending. The young man became a very good monk and became very famous in Japan. Before that he was a playboy, so this is exchanging of self with others. Finally, is to meditate on giving and taking. What do we give and what do we take? Okay, I will now teach you how to do this. Please close your eyes and visualize that there are many people in front of you, just like in this room, maybe more than in this room. These beings are suffering. The sufferings of beings are transformed into black smoke. Inhale all this black smoke into yourself. When you visualize this, visualize that you are absorbing all the sufferings of these beings that are in front of you. You completely absorb their sufferings. After that, you visualize that from your own body. After that, you visualize that from your own body, because you have received the blessings of the triple gem, you are able to radiate a brilliant ray of light onto these suffering beings that you visualized in front of you. When this bright, brilliant light shines onto these beings, showers onto them metta, and they receive peace and happiness. Again, you visualize the sufferings of the beings in front of you are in the form of black smoke, and again you breathe in all this black smoke, completely absorbing the sufferings of these beings in front of you, and again you radiate metta to these beings in front of you. This is the practice. This is a practice of giving metta. Taking the suffering and relieving the suffering of other sentient beings is karuna. So you practice metta and karuna. The development of metta is well practiced, especially in the Theravada tradition. It is known as metta bhavana. Not only metta, we develop the four Brahmaviharas, that is metta, karuna, mudita, and upekkha. There is a beautiful story in a Mahayana sutra, called Vimalakirti Sutra. Vimalakirti was a lay bodhisattva, who lived during the time of the Buddha. Once when he was sick, Manjushri, who personifies wisdom, went on behalf of the Buddha to inquire on the well-being of Vimalakirti. He asked Vimalakirti, "How are you?" "Oh, I'm not well," said Vimalakirti. "Why are you not well?" Vimalakirti answered, the answer is very beautiful. I am sick because beings are sick. This is a great bodhisattva. Beings are sick because they have the kilesa, or the defilements of greed, anger, and ignorance. An arahant, a pasaka buddha, a bodhisattva and a sammasambuddha transcends these kilesas or these three poisons. In the case of a bodhisattva, he took upon the sufferings of others as his own. Conclusion. To conclude, in the beginning we talked about total quality management, how I applied the Buddha's teachings in my management job before my ordination. I found the Buddha's teachings to be very useful, and you need only to apply the teaching of cause and effect. According to the teaching of cause and effect, you will do very well if you plant good causes. If you are running your own business, your business will be very successful. Now many people have the idea that if they are running a business they cannot be too honest. Do you know what they mean by too honest? They said, you cannot be too honest, you must tell a little lie. How can this be? If we as Buddhists understand the teaching of cause and effect, what is telling a lie? Telling a lie is an unskillful act. If telling a lie can make you prosper, it means that a bad cause can lead to a good result, then there is no cause and effect relationship. So if you want good result, you must plant the seed, you must plant the cause that will eventually give you good results. Like Konosuke Matsushita said, you have to serve the society. If you serve society well, then your company will be successful. If you only have profit in mind, then you may do a lot of unscrupulous activities. So please understand, if you are running your own business, honesty is a better policy than dishonesty. Many people think that in the good old days, yes, you can be honest, but not today. No, that is a wrong concept. I would say that honesty was the best policy in the past, honesty is still the best policy now, and honesty will be the best policy in the future. Of course, the Buddha's teachings not only teach us how to live in this world. The value of the Buddha's teachings is to lead us out of suffering altogether and to attain bliss, nibbana. In order to do that, we have to develop renunciation. Renunciation is the cause, nibbana is the end result. However, if your motive is not only gaining liberation for yourself, you wish that all sentient beings will be liberated from sufferings. Then you set the goal of achieving perfect enlightenment, sammasambuddha, so that you may help all sentient beings. You have thus developed bodhicitta. Bodhicitta is the cause and sammasambuddha is the end result. We have come a long way. If you are able to practice renunciation and bodhicitta, you have transcended TQM altogether.